After 4 years of development, I am proud to introduce Odin 3, the world's best virtual guitar for rock and metal music. In this video, we are going to do a deep dive into all the new features Odin 3 has to offer and how it can help you to take your productions to the next level. When you first load Odin 3, you will notice a preset loader at the top of the user interface. Here you can load various presets, whether it's a clean DI or amped, or specific pan settings for rhythms or leads. And of course, you can also save your own presets with the various features we've added. Underneath, we have the key switch list, which will show you all of the articulations that are available in Odin 3, as well as which key switches will trigger them. Later in this video, I will be showing you how to use these key switches to make incredible sounding performances. We then have the amp section where you can choose between DI, rhythm, lead, and clean. Now, while I love combining Odin with our very own Runeforge Fenrir amp or even our free amp, Mini Fenrir, sometimes it can just be really easy to quickly jot down an idea by clicking one button and start writing. The Humanize knob will randomize the velocities of the notes being played to get a more human feel, and the pan knobs will naturally pan the loaded guitars. We also have this neat little link feature. By default, it will be clicked on, and so when it's on, your left guitar and your right guitar will pan at the same time. This way, you don't have to turn two dials just to get your guitars panned right. Next, we have 3 different voicings for pickups, which is 3 smart EQ patterns altering the tone of the DI. The bridge def pattern is the default because that's exactly what we captured. It's a very hot, typically metal type of pickup, while bridge modern is a bit more tamed and controlled. At the bottom, we then have the MIDI keyboard showing you what you're playing. But interestingly, we also made sure that when you play a given key switch, that is shown to you along with the key switch name listed on the keys. This is a really easy reminder, so you don't have to open the key switch list just to check, oh, what did this key do again? You can just look at the MIDI keyboard real quick and go, oh yeah, that's the palm mute. Oh yeah, that's the hammer-on. On the right of the MIDI keyboard, we also have the string selection modifiers. So this is where you can get really specific with which note you want to be played where. Of course, we also have very smart predefined patterns, so you don't have to manually choose where every single note is played all the time, but it's just an option for if you want to go really deep. On the playing tab, we have various features that alter how Odin plays. Of course, soften attack softens the attack. This is not a feature I would recommend using too often. Out of the box, Odin 3's pick attack is simply great. And usually when you go down in velocity, the attack will already be changed as you go down. But if you notice, hey, the velocities don't quite get this right for me, you absolutely still go in there and fine-tune to taste. Next, we have Force Vibrato, and this is one of my personal favorite features. If you watch the tutorials on our Solemn Tones YouTube channel, where over the years I have tried to teach you as much as I can about Odin 2 and how to get really great performances out of it, you will notice that whenever I played a slower lead part, I would go in and draw vibratos with pitch bend modulation. However, this can be quite tiresome. If you have a lot of vibratos throughout a solo or a very slow piece, having to draw them every single time can take a while. So I figured, why don't I turn this into a feature and just have it be done automatically? Now, of course, I don't want this to be on when I play like rhythm guitars and slow chords. We don't want to vibrato our chords during a chorus, for example. But whenever I load some lead guitar and I know I'm going to have some slower passages, I can just flick on Force Vibrato and the vibrato will automatically be there already. Attack will define how quickly into the note we start the vibrato. This is very important because when you hit a note, usually you're not going to start bending it from the get-go. You want your listener to know, oh, this note is being played, and then start bending it. Amplitude will define how high you will be bending, and speed will alter how quickly you will be bending. When you combine these 3 functions, you essentially have full control over your vibratos. Now, if you're going to write a lead part for an album or perhaps even a film score, it might still be useful to manually draw your vibratos so that they are different whenever they come up to really enhance that human feel. But I find this feature already gets me 95% of the way there. Once again, this is all about ensuring when your inspiration strikes, you can write and worry about the technical details later. String select is one of the features I'm personally most excited about in Odin 3. As you know, most notes on the guitar can be played in various locations on the neck, and every single spot will have its own unique tone. We really wanted to give you the control over which notes are played where. But we also wanted to make sure that it is easy to have this control. So we essentially have 3 levels of going about this. First, we have manual mode. This will let you define one specific string that the engine will attempt to play the notes on. Maybe it's the 8th string because you really want those round, warm tones, and then you're going to be doing some riffs on the 12th and 14th frets. And then if you want to deviate from this, you can simply choose where every single note is played from that point with the string select key switches. However, you can also turn on auto, and in the auto mode, you will find various predefined smart patterns where Odin will very logically play like different types of players. Naturally, this also just gives you the option of defining a specific fret position, and then Odin will attempt to play every single note in that position. Unless the given note cannot be found in said position, then it will still attempt to be as close as possible. But finally, of course, we also have musicians who really want that full control. And that is when you turn on any mode, it doesn't really matter, and simply choose every single note location with the key switch string select modifiers. Of course, in the end, the most efficient workflow will probably be some type of hybrid between all 3 of these. Maybe for your rhythm guitars, your riffs are all on the 8th string with some round, cool notes, but then you have a pinch harmonic here or there that you're going to be playing specifically on another string. That's when you use the string select modifier key switch. Perhaps then for your solos, you're going to use auto mode in a specific position because you already know most of it is played in that position, and then you can still use the string select key switches when you find it necessary. Odin 3 really allows you to craft your own workflow, and I'm sure you will find it extremely easy to get some incredible performances out of it on day 1. Next, we have human noises. This is like the human error menu you will find in our virtual basses, but then a little bit better. If you watched the Solemn Tones YouTube channel before, you know I do all of our tutorials, and I would often place little mutes behind certain notes to really emulate a guitar player muting the string with his or her right hand. I wanted to ensure that I never had to do that again, and so now this sound is completely built into the human noises menu. This is why you will also notice that the human noises are always on by default in the rhythm presets, just at a very little percentage. But of course, if you want to have an extremely clean, almost digital sounding guitar, you can just turn it off. Presets are just there to make your life easier, but you don't have to feel shackled by them. Auto chord delay is a neat little time-saving feature that I personally love. As you know, whenever a guitarist strikes a chord, they will strike the strings one by one. It is physically impossible to have your pick be in multiple locations at the same time. This technically means that whenever we are programming a chord in MIDI and having all the notes start at the exact same time, we are making the virtual guitar do something that isn't actually possible in the real world. However, manually placing all of these notes a little late and a little different from each other can be tiresome. So I figured, why not make a feature out of this and just have the engine do it automatically? This is what auto chord delay will do for you. You simply turn it up a little depending on how fast your song or passage goes, or how fast your guitarist usually strums, and the chords will be delayed accordingly. One neat little thing you will notice about this dial is that at first, when you turn it up, it will work in milliseconds, but as you turn it higher and higher, it will start matching the BPM of your project. We implemented it this way because if you're doing fast chords or typical metal type of stuff, you're probably gonna work in the first half, just really fast strumming, no problem. But then if you start playing at the lower velocities that Odin 3 offers, and you're maybe playing a cleaner part, it can be really cool to have those luscious slow chords, which you do want to match the tempo of your song. Finally, on the playing tab, we have the auto slide function. This will make it so when two notes overlap, they will automatically slide from one to the next. While Odin 3 does come with various sliding key switches, of course, these are pre-recorded, and so when you really want slides to match the exact speed of your song, perhaps you want to do it manually with this auto slide function. Though I personally would always start with the pre-recorded ones because they sound incredible. On the advanced page, we have some interesting settings like auto sustain. The reason for this function is twofold. First of all, I've been doing the customer support for Solemn Tones all these years, and whenever someone was finding it challenging to get a realistic performance, things tended to sound choppy. They might use MIDI from Guitar Pro, which has very odd gaps between notes, and so this way you get performances that humans could never play. By turning on auto sustain, these gaps would be automatically filled, and so even the most robotic Guitar Pro type MIDI would sound more fluid whenever this is turned on. However, the second reason is probably the most important, and that's whenever you're playing with a MIDI keyboard and your finger moves from one note to the next, you might once again have a small gap that makes your performance sound less realistic. Now, really good MIDI keyboard players or people using sustain pedals really well probably have no problem with this, but if that's not you, and that's definitely not me, it can still be really nice to not have to worry about that and just turn it on and start performing, figuring out lines from that while still having a really cool tone already. With that being said, whenever I'm writing regularly, I do want to have full control over my sound, and so it is off by default. Realign phase is a function you might recognize because it was also in Odin 2. This will essentially ensure that the two guitars are in phase. While both guitars have completely different sample sets, there is not a single shared sample between the two, it is still possible for tightly recorded, perfectly intonated guitars to start phasing when they are two alike. And so turning on this feature will alleviate this challenge. Add palm mute static introduces noise into your palm mutes. It's not something I would personally turn on, but if you want to have very raw, almost ugly recordings, you can. Enforce pick attack enforces the pick attack. And detune detunes the guitar. The reason we have detune is it's possible you already recorded some instrument, maybe guitars even, and you really wanted to use Odin 3 to make two guitars into quad-track guitars. However, not everyone necessarily records super tight. It is possible your entire recording is a little sharp or a little flat. Detune allows you to match Odin to said intonation. Some bands also like to record in 432 Hz, and so that's also an option. Slide speed affects the speed at which the auto slide function works. As I mentioned before, we do have sliding key switches, but these are pre-recorded slides, and so their speed is bound to how fast they were recorded. We have slow slides, we have fast slides, but maybe you want something even more in between, or even slower, or even faster. Slide speed will let you control that. And finally, we have the tuning section. Now, while in theory, every single note is available on Odin 3 at all times, just like on a piano, this is just a visual help. The guitar visual at the top of the user interface, of course, is tuned a certain way. And so if you really want to see how a certain riff is being played for your specific tuning, you can change the tuning. But again, this has no influence whatsoever on your sound. This is purely for the guitar visual at the top of the UI. Now that we've gone over the various features in the user interface, let's write a little riff and see what we can do. This is the demo song for the announcement trailer of Odin, Odin, and I wanted to show you how you would go from just a couple notes to a finished guitar performance. So we got Odin loaded here and soloed, and this is what you have when you only put in the notes. So this is something you could probably get out of Guitar Pro or something like that. Just notes, nothing else. So this is pure alternative picking, and there's a couple things we want to do to really make this great. First of all, we want to have some more articulations, and the easiest one is going to be palm mutes. We can highlight some notes right here, let's say these. Let's say all the quick ones right here. And we are going to put them at 30 velocity, and that would turn them into mutes. So now that we have the mutes placed in, the next thing we want to do is probably change which string certain notes are being played on. As you could hear right now, these really fast runs are very hard to play for a real human, I think. One thing we could do is go into the playing right here, and let's set it to manual mode. And then let's define something like string 7 or so. This way, all of these notes, whenever possible, will be played on the 7th string. Let's see what that sounds like. That sounds way better. Now you can also put it on the 8th string. That actually still sounds really cool, so I'm fine with that. Alternatively, you can put it on auto and then define on which position you want to be playing these notes. The first 5 or so frets, you can define these positions by clicking here. Now, what if you really wanted to control which notes are played, not just setting it and then letting the engine do its work, but actually defining every single note? Then you would put in a key switch that modifies the string. So if we scroll up, you can see I already placed a string modifier key switch. So right here, if I press this in, boom, this is going to try to play everything on the 8th string, except for this one note that will be played on the 7th string. Literally all of these notes are going to be on the 8th, then this one little note is going to be on the 7th, and then back all to 8. One thing you will still notice is that all of these notes are very, very, very fast. And while that's technically possible, it's probably going to be a bit more realistic that some of these are going to be hammer-ons and pull-offs. So this is going to be where we're going to add key switches. So you're going to scroll down and you're going to check out your key switch list. For example, here, C# -1 is hammer-on. That means whenever we want a certain note to be played as a hammer-on, we're going to go right under it and place the note C# -1. So now this note up here is going to be a hammer-on. And we probably want the same thing to be happening here. We probably want the same thing to be happening here. We probably want the same thing to be happening here, and so forth. How do we go from one fast hammer-on to another fast note? It's probably going to be a pull-off. So then if we check out pull-off is D-1, let's put this note on D-1, and so now it makes a lot of sense. We're going to have a hammer-on, a regular picked note, but that could also be a pull-off perhaps, then another hammer-on, then another pull-off. So if we check out what that looks like on the final demo actually, we have right here some hammer-ons, we have a pull-off, a hammer-on, a pull-off, and then regular notes again. A completely finished MIDI looks like this then. So right here we have the notes, under it we have the articulations, and on top we have the string select. But again, you could also just turn on manual mode and choose a string for simpler riffs like this. But let's check out the result. This sounds a whole lot more realistic because these super fast notes now no longer have pick attack because they're being hammered on and pulled off. And of course, we then also want to put that into context of the mix. That sounds pretty cool. Of course, we'll be doing deep dives in full MIDI songs and more complex situations, but that's for future videos. And of course, if you have any questions about Odin 3 or how you can do certain things, drop them in the comments down below. I will gladly help out. I will also be putting the MIDI for the first Odin 3 sound demo in the link in the description, so you can experiment with it and maybe learn something from it. And I hope you enjoy everything Odin 3 has to offer. If you've been part of the Solemn Tones Facebook group or the Solemn Tones Discord, you know this is a very, very long time coming. There are threads of me in 2019 asking questions like, what do you want to see? How should we go about this? We really set out to create the perfect virtual guitar for rock and metal musicians, and I truly believe we did that. I'm really stoked to see what you all create with it. Enjoy.